What is up, YouTube? Welcome to another edition of Nerdy Sense Reviews. It's your boy Corey, and today we are reviewing X-Men Apocalypse. That's right, I went to see this movie, and to be honest, I was not all that excited as I have been for past X-Men movies. I've said this numerous times on my channel after watching the X-Men trailers. The trailers really weren't able to get me as excited as I was for Days of Future Past, most of all. The final trailer did raise my excitement a lot, but it still wasn't nearly what it was when I went in to see Days of Future Past, especially on the heels of First Class, because that was such a great quality movie. Days of Future Past was such a great quality movie. So I went in with kind of the bar lowered for this film, and that was a mistake on my part. I'll tell you right now that this movie was much better than I expected it to be. I had read reviews, I had read other people's opinions, pretty credible sites and critics, people who I've read and followed for most of my life, especially my adult life, and there were some pretty harsh things said about X-Men Apocalypse. And I can tell you now that I don't agree with a lot of the critiques that it got, a lot of the dissenting opinions. When coming out of this movie, I'm really confused at all of the negative, the negative hype that surrounded it. Now, did this movie have problems? Yes. Yes, it did. Is it the best X-Men movie? No, it's not. Is it better than Days of Future Past? Hell no, it's not. But would I put it in my top 3 of X-Men films? Yes. Yes, I would. I honestly believe it goes Days of Future Past, X2, then X-Men Apocalypse, then First Class. Then X-Men. That's honestly how I feel about how I would rank the best X-Men movies. With X2, I just feel like X2 was, for me, one of the best X-Men films. But for all of the negative critiques that this movie got, I don't see why. When the movie started, it is a little slow. It takes a little while for it to get into gear, and I understand that. Apocalypse is one of the biggest villains in the X-Men universe. He is the biggest. He's the big bad guy. When you go back and you watch the X-Men animated series, a lot of things lead up to Apocalypse, especially X-Men Evolution. X-Men Evolution's whole culmination led up to the big Apocalypse reveal. He is the world's oldest and most powerful mutant. To me. Other people have different views, but to me, Apocalypse is the original badass. He's the OG of mutants. And it had to set him up in some form rather of the other. Now, I don't think that they did Apocalypse justice fully. They did what they could, and he seemed like, a big badass for the movie. He had a lot of depth surrounding him. He was very, very menacing. His voice, the way that he looked, his actions, he was menacing. But in the comics, he's a lot more menacing. I think they could have did a lot more with the way that he looked as well. When people first saw trailers, they said that he looked like Ivan Ooze. And he doesn't look like that in the film anymore, mainly because they reworked a lot of the effects and how they presented him in the film. But I think they could have did a little bit of a better job. I kind of feel like a little bit of this movie was phoned in. You know, it's kind of like that last bit of X-Men movie. So it's kind of like, you know, let's just phone some shit in. There are a lot of bad critiques about Jennifer Lawrence's performance as Mystique. I paid close attention to her in this film, and at the end, like the third act, it does look like she kind of didn't want to be there anymore. But for the beginning of the film, she did a pretty serviceable job as Mystique. In Days of Future Past, it looked like she was coming into her own as Mystique, like we were getting the Mystique that we deserved. And for the first part of X-Men Apocalypse, it also looks like that. I thought that, you know, she was going to be great in this movie. At the beginning, I was like, I don't see what people are so mad about her performance for. But coming up to the ending, yes, I believe that she kind of fell off as the movie progressed. Whereas by the end, it did not look like Jennifer Lawrence was the least bit interested in being in the movie anymore. It looked like during the end, she was thinking about other projects that she might have had in the work. Her mind was not, you know, her mind was a world away. But luckily enough, I think the movie has enough going on within each of different subplots and different stories to where her performance as Mystique does not take away from the general enjoyment of the movie. I thought Nightcrawler was a great addition to this film. Nightcrawler was beyond a doubt one of my favorite parts of X2. And I believe that them bringing him, not the same actor, but I believe them bringing back the character for Apocalypse was a very, very smart move. Quicksilver was always the delight in this movie. His scene in Apocalypse totally topped what was Days of Future Past, and I didn't think that they would be able to, but they actually made a scene that was a lot better than Days of Future Past. So big ups to the production crew and the director, for Bryan Singer, for being able to give us another scene from Quicksilver that is even better than Days of Future Past. I will tell you guys that one of my favorite scenes of the movie happens to be a forest scene with Magneto. No spoilers, I'm not going to ruin anything for you guys, but a certain scene with Magneto in the forest was probably one of my favorite. Magneto had so much more depth in this film, and I didn't think that that was possible because of the amount of backstory and depth that he received in the first two films. They flushed Magneto out so well in First Class and Days of Future Past that I just did not think it was possible to flesh him out anymore, to give us a different side of him, to give us so many layers. And this is beyond a doubt one of the most well represented scripts for Magneto. You really feel where, if you think back of everything that happened in X1, X2, how Magneto was in those original X-Men films, and you look at this film and you try to see how Magneto in this evolution, I know the timeline was reset, but if you just try to think about the character that Magneto is in the first X-Men film, the second X-Men film, you really get a sense of the different situations, the different events that he was put in that could lead him to be the type of person he was in the original X-Men films, to have the kind of view that he did. And to his interaction with Charles Xavier is always so beautiful. They are truly, the chemistry that both sets of Professor X and Magneto have always been just such an enjoyment for me in the film. Just to see them communicate, to see them interact, and to try and see how each character came to be who they were in the original X-Men films and the situations that led them up to that point. It's just so delightful, and it's obviously one of the best parts of the X-Men films. We got Storm, we got Jean Grey, played by Sophie Turner, who is also Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones. Sophie Turner was great. I came in thinking, oh, we got Sansa. But by the end of the movie, I was not thinking of her as Sansa anymore. I really literally seen her as Jean Grey. And that is always, I've always said that to take someone out of an original role that they see someone in and convince them that they are the character that they are in a movie, that's always the sign of a great thespian. And Sophie Turner definitely did take me out of my seeing her as Sansa Stark and making me believe that she was the character that she was portraying on the screen. We got some of the original characters from the X films like Cyclops, Storm, and that's always great to see as well, because those were literally some of the best characters of the original X-Men movies, hands down. But don't despair, these actors absolutely nail it. I did have the one thing that I would say that kind of shook me up a little bit and, you know, kind of made me lower my grade that I have for this movie a little bit, would be that I feel like the movie kind of trapped itself. The things that were going on to describe who Apocalypse was and his motivations, I kind of felt by the end of the film he might have lost sight just a bit. Of course, Bryan Singer is trying to close out this amazing trilogy, and in doing so, he has to pick. It has to culminate. It has to be something. The stakes have to be a lot larger, of course, in this film. And I felt like what was at stake, there may have been a little lost sight of that by the end of the film. I felt the goal did not match up with the end point by the end of the film, and that's probably one of the only things. Like the overall ends to justify the means. I felt like they kind of lost sight of what the mean was by the end of the film, and it definitely did not line up with what the goal at the beginning of the film was stated. But I just feel that that's probably because they're trying to close everything out. There were one or two appearances in the film that I did not think fit. It's not Wolverine, just so you guys know. It absolutely is not Wolverine. Had I not seen Wolverine in the final trailer, I'm kind of regretting that I did see that scene. Wolverine's scene was absolutely killer. I loved every second of it. It was so intense to just see him on film going to town. And if you watch it, if you have not seen the final trailer for X-Men Apocalypse, do not watch it, because if you go into X-Men and you see this scene, it will blow your mind. Unfortunately, I had got a little bit of that from the trailer, so my mind wasn't exactly blown as it could have been, but I was able to separate myself and take myself out of that bias and out of that perception. So it absolutely a great scene. Guys, I have to give X-Men Apocalypse a B+. It is just a step below Days of Future Past for me. I still believe that Days of Future Past was the best X-Men film thus far, but I put this one at a close third. Third only to X2, behind X-Men Days of Future Past. So if you are on the fence about going to see this film because some of the negative reviews that you are seeing, rest assured it is a beautiful, well-directed film. It has a lot of action. The beginning is a bit slow, but with every progressive shot, as the stakes get larger and larger and the characters, and you start to progress through the film, it does get better. So just sit tight through the first 30 minutes or so of the film, and I promise you, you will be well rewarded. I don't know what's going to happen with the X-Men franchise after this. We're not sure if Bryan Singer is going to come back on board and direct any more X-Men films. If he doesn't, it is totally understandable. He has earned his place in superhero lore and legend with the great films that he has given us. Jennifer Lawrence has also come back on saying that she's interested in doing more X films, although it didn't look like it during the final act of the film. I'm pretty sure that some of the staple characters, they got a good young cast. I'm pretty sure that they're going to carry on with that, and maybe we'll even get some Deadpool in there sooner or later. Guys, I absolutely enjoyed this film. I give it 2 thumbs up, B+. If you're on the fence, go ahead, see it. Take your kids, take your husband, take your boyfriend, take your girlfriend. Go see this film. It is highly enjoyable, and I do not agree with the critics on the negative reviews they're giving it. I can understand where some of them are coming from, but I believe some critics start to check out if a movie does not grab them at the beginning. So remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed the review, comment below, let me know what you thought of the X-Men movie. If you've seen it, let me know if you're planning on going to see it. I'm going to go ahead and get some sleep now. As always, I will catch you later. NS Nation, stand up.